Welcome to Beyond This Point Ministries. I'm Joyce, your host, and I'm thrilled you dropped by. If this is your first time visiting my program, I invite you to hit on some of the other topics I have regarding relationships. I talk each week about family. I'm an author of a pair of bookends for marriage. Perhaps you'll go to my website and check them out. They've been a terrific inspiration for spicing up a marriage, keeping romance alive and commitment strong. Just the right balance for any marriage. This week's message is focused on Mother's Day. It will be a 3-part series. Mother's Day is always a big day every year. The florists tell me it's bigger than Valentine's Day, and you know what? It should be. A mother's sacrifice should be honored because that's what mothers do best. I have an awesome message called The Sacrificial Gift that hones in on the sacrifice of women. It's a really, shall I say, different kind of message, but it leads back to the ultimate sacrifice of our Savior. I'd love to come and present it at your church sometime, so perhaps you'll invite me to do that someday. We celebrate Mother's Day in fine style at our church. We host a marvelous mother-daughter banquet. In fact, it's the highlight of not only our church, but also our community. We assign a theme to our banquet each year, and we give them a year's notice. Themes like Once Upon a Time or Broadway. We did International Affair. This year's theme is 50 Years of Funny, and it's going to just be great. Our ladies hosts a table, inviting guests to come and enjoy the fine dining as well as the program that is presented around the particular theme. The hostesses decorate their tables accordingly, and I can attest to the grandeur of the occasion. It is fabulous. As the ladies ministry team leader for 15 years at our church, I have been in charge of putting on and pulling off the gala affair. I introduced the custom to our church when we first came to Lincoln Hills. I passed the baton this year since launching my ministry, and this ministry has kicked in really strong, so I was glad I did. I suspect, however, the tradition will carry on for years long after I'm gone. But oh, how I love wandering around the festive room once the event is underway. Not just to view the creative and the beautifully decorated tables, but to mingle with the people. Mothers take great delight in introducing their daughters, or vice versa. It's precious to see the interaction of the diverse relationships. I would notice, however, as warming as the notion was of my wandering around, that I would come away with a part of my heart feeling very heavy for the same privilege afforded to many of the ladies present. And all the mother-daughter affairs I have been a party to, I have yet to be the middle gal, if you will, where my mother was seated on one side and my daughters on the other, with myself sandwiched in between. My mother lived quite a distance from me, and it seemed never possible to get her to the events. Now, my oldest daughter, Tanja, is in Georgia, our home state, and we're up in Indiana, 6 hours away. When Tanja was at home, it wasn't a problem. She had no choice but to accompany her mother to such banquets, but she usually played a big part in the program. Now she's a mother herself, and the distance makes it all the more difficult for us to merge company during this special season. But to further complicate matters, there was the blessed but unfortunate timing of the birth of her first child on Mother's Day. Now that really mucked up things a little bit for the planning of mother-daughter galas. But since I was in charge of the event at the church here, I merely bumped it up a week. That afforded me the opportunity to get the mother-daughter underway and over with, then focus on my grandson's birthday and be with my kids on Mother's Day weekend. Now she's gone and committed the unsufferable. She had her baby girl the week prior to Mother's Day. So now we're back at square one. It's beginning to look like we may never get to enjoy a mother-daughter season together again. I don't get caught up in the drama of that, however, because I make mother and daughter events happen often. It's important for me to keep up that relationship. Marcy, my youngest daughter, lives in the same town that we do. Even being so close, we find it difficult with her busy schedule, coupled with my busy schedule, of finding time to just enjoy each other's company. You know what I find? We must make it happen. It usually involves the grandkids, and that's quite fine with this Mimi, I can assure you. But occasionally, as rare as it is, we set aside time for just Mom and Marcy. Likewise, I do the same for Mom and Tanja when I'm in Atlanta. There are many facets of home life that I didn't enjoy as a child. One was special time with my mother. Life was taxing on the farm. She had 8 children she was rearing, and they were stepping stones, just like this. The memory of the chaos of little feet under you all day came back loud and clear with my 5 grandkids under my feet over spring break. It was hectic, to say the least, but exhilaratingly fabulous. I don't recall that jubilant feeling as one of the kids involved in the chaos growing up, nor do I recall my mom ever putting it into those terms. Makes you wonder how the octo-mom Nadia Suleman plans on keeping civility. Well, actually, I think America has already established that she hasn't and won't. Having a bonding relationship with your mother is one thing. Enjoying a real connection with her is quite something else. The majority of mothers, thankfully, have a natural bond to their children. We are witnessing, however, more and more moms shirk that ever-urgent responsibility of motherhood. I believe that it's one of God's highest callings and honor that He bestows upon the woman. I craved and was literally starved for the connection with my mother. Life was simply too busy, too demanding, and too painful for her when I was growing up. I am grateful, however, that my baby sister would enjoy that connection. It proved to be far more important for her than me. I would be the stronger one in faith initially. I learned early in life to depend on God. They needed each other more than I did, and because they just weren't quite as grounded as I was in faith. My sister, being the baby, would get more attention and more protection from mother, and vice versa. And that was very satisfying once I got married and was removed from being the support and protection to her in the home. Time would be turbulent for mother. She would live in a domestically violent situation for 32 years. I find that utterly unfathomable. There would be very few days in that span of time that she wouldn't be abused in some manner. That is a heavy sentence to endure in a marital prison. That is another subject we'll broach down the road on one of my segments. I often speak on domestic violence. As you can tell, it's one of my deep-rooted passions, and I have zero tolerance for the abuse. Even once mother divorced my dad, she would endure the blow of his hands for several more years. No matter where she moved, he would seek her out and pop in for unwelcome visits. Once my sister got married, the visits became even more frequent. She was a tortured woman for the bulk of her years here on earth. Once she finally broke free of him, her health was in shambles. One thing about my mother that I feel worth mentioning, however, is regardless of the pain she endured, she managed to evoke a smile and offer a kind word to people. She was loved and admired by all who knew her. She was stranger to no one and helped those she found in greater need than herself. She lived meagerly, yet never complained of what she might require to get by. She just did. She had her difficult seasons in life, trying to survive the mayhem of her marriage, and she stockpiled regrets that she would recall from time to time, as well as those she chose to suppress from her memory. She did dwell on the ghost of despair more so with her 2 daughters than anyone else. I suppose she felt very comfortable in that zone with the 2 of us. She was plagued with varied illnesses for many years. Having suffered many broken bones throughout the history of her relationship with my dad, arthritis began to take its toll on her. Other encumbrances of her health brought about by affliction at his hands or years of neglect would restrict her mobility in the final days of her life. I did my best at long-distance nurturing, but it was my sister who would be her primary caregiver. Kathy would assume the role of mother to Mom, yet never give up her position as baby girl, and I find that extraordinarily beautiful. As pleased as I was for the relationship the 2 shared, there was always a part of me that longed for the same. Our talks on the phone would be what I would call shallow at best. It seemed as though the only connection we had was the past, which I have always prided myself in stepping out of and beyond. I didn't like recalling events or hearing of what plagued her thoughts, invaded her nightly dreams, and enslaved her even in her final years. I had broken free of those episodes. God had been triumphant in my life to forgive, and I wanted to forget them as well. But each time we talked, try as I might, the conversation would wrap itself back around to the horrors of home. I would interject discussion about my kids and then eventually my grandkids. That would usually evoke a momentary diversion. She simply couldn't catch up with my world. Instead, she wanted to hang on to what we were familiar with, as unpleasant as the memories were. Thus, the disconnect that we would experience as mother and daughter in my childhood would continue to be. I appreciated how God's comforting words of wisdom would teach me patience with my mother and would offer me strength to just listen and not react harshly with her. Frustration would certainly stir within my soul, but I would pull back and do my best at displaying understanding. On the days I found that particular thing to be especially difficult to do, because after all, I am human, I would simply cut the conversation short. It proved to be sound judgment. Mother's health would wax and wane. She was eventually confined to wheelchair exposure. The difficult years had taken its toll on her, and she was a smoker. That's one vice I could never seem to break her of. It would play against her the final hours. Regardless of how much you prepare yourself for that dreadful call, you're never ready. And those are memories that plant themselves deep into the banks of your thought process. Though it's been 4 years, the drama still plays out, all 8 sordid weeks of the whole affair. I was in the Savannah, Georgia area. My husband's niece was getting married, and I was gracing her with a bridesmaids brunch. It was a fun time, connecting with family again, and a happy occasion, lighthearted and upbeat. I was getting everything together the night before the big day. One thing you'll learn about me is I put 150% into everything I do. Consequently, people love it when I throw them showers because I make memories and I do my best to make them special. Aunt Joyce's touch was anticipated, and we were all looking forward to the big event the next day. I received a call from my sister. Mother was in the hospital and was not expected to live. She had been sick for 4 weeks. How quickly could I get there? They were giving her less than a couple of hours. Wow, what a position to be in. I'm a person of strong consciousness about commitment. Should I stay? Should I go? I was 5 hours away from the hospital. If indeed she did pass, I would not make it in time to see her. How could I let Ashley down with the most important event in her life at that point in time? It was a real issue. Seems like a no-brainer to some of you, I realize, but it was a tough predicament for me. I began praying. First and foremost, I prayed for my mother's situation. Then I began praying for wisdom of what to do. I placed Mother's situation in God's hands. I stuck around for the brunch the next morning, and I missed the wedding. Everyone understood. The event went off beautifully, and I made it to the hospital at just the right time to see the doctors and begin helping to make decisions. Next week, I'll pick up part 2 of a beautiful Mother's Day morning. I hope you'll join me for this celebration of motherhood series. Motherhood truly is one of women's greatest joys, even when it presents with disappointment and heartache. There's just something more special than words can describe about that blessing God conferred to women. If you have questions you'd like to send my way, go to my website, joyceoglesby.com, or you can send me an email at justaskjoyce@gmail.com. I spend an awful lot of time each week addressing issues with women, men, young people about marriage and family issues, relationships with spouses, friends, in-laws and outlaws, even employees and employers. I'd be happy to help you too. Make sure you check out the message found in these 2 books I've authored, Keeping His Pants On Until He Gets Home, and Turning Her On and Keeping Her Heart. They're the perfect bookends for your marriage, whether yours is as solid as the Rock of Gibraltar or is going through the devastation of Hurricane Katrina. You can benefit from the principles outlined herein. See you next week. May God bless your days, your marriage, and your home.